Hello again, friends and neighbors, and welcome to the poem of the day. Today is poem of the day number 10, I think. Today, we are going to hear a poem from the poet known as H.D. Her given name is Hilda Doolittle, but she's often known by and referred to simply as H.D. She's an American poet who was a part of the modernist movement, specifically the Imagist movement. And you'll be able to hear within her poem that I'm going to read today and others of her poems a strong dedication to that form of imagism that is um, focused, simply descriptive. It lends itself to deeper readings once we begin to understand metaphor or allegory and apply it to her poems. But they're poems that seem to be very intimate and very small and focus on the surface. And some of that, the quality of that being opaque, I think makes them open to interpretations where you're going to see like bigger forces at play in the poem. So the one that I'm going to read today is called Garden. And just real quick, I'll acknowledge our visitors back again. Cooper's back there on my reading chair for the poem here. And this poem is called Garden. It's from 1915 by H.D. You are clear, O rose, cut in rock, hard as the descent of hail. I could scrape the color from the petals like split dye from a rock. If I could break you, I could break a tree. If I could stir, I could break a tree. I could break you. O wind, rend open the heat, cut apart the heat, rend it to tatters. Fruit cannot drop through this thick air. Fruit cannot fall into heat that presses up and blunts the points of pears and rounds the grapes. Cut the heat, plow through it, turning it on either side of your path. All right. So you could probably hear, as you were listening through, the tone of the poem is one that's, I think, kind of agitated or anxious. And I think it's because the speaker is undergoing a feeling of powerlessness or, um, oppression or perhaps repression throughout this poem. And they're reading that internal struggle onto what they're observing out of nature. And the poem is in two parts. It's in, I'm going to call them cantos, two cantos here, because each of the two parts has four stanzas within it. All of the stanzas are 3 lines long, except for the third is 2 lines long, and the eighth is 4 lines long. You also probably noticed that there was no end rhyme within the poem, as has been characteristic of a lot of the poems that we've read on here. You might have heard the first canto begins with what's called an apostrophe, which is the acknowledging or speaking to something that's usually not a person or a personal subject. Usually it's something that's inanimate. It could be, love. It could be certain conceptions of God. Here it's a rose. We're addressing a rose in the first half, and in the second, the speaker's addressing the wind. And in the first half, the speaker observes that the rose sticks out clear, cut in the rock, hard as the descent of hail. So I'm thinking that they're observing a rose, a flower, a symbol of beauty and love, as breaking through some of the harder elements of nature. And this makes the speaker then go think about their own power over nature, that they could scrape the color from the petals. But then there's doubt cast upon that in the next two stanzas, if I could, and if I could. So we have an anaphora in those two stanzas at the beginning. If I could break a tree, if I could break you. So the speaker is somewhat feeling smaller and kind of lamenting this idea that they're not as powerful as the nature and the rose that they're admiring. In the second part, we begin again with an apostrophe, speaking to the wind. And then we're getting a series of hyperboles. Everyone knows the feeling of a hot summer day and wishing for that breeze because that breeze comes in and gives us some relief from the stifling heat. The way the speaker addresses the wind here and the wind's power is that it would rend open the heat, cut it apart, and rend it to tatters. And I think that's interesting because when we're outside and we get that peaceful breeze, it's something that is welcome and relieving and tranquil. But here, the verbs that are used are ones of violence and splitting and tearing and breaking apart. Further hyperboles in here speak of fruit not being able to drop because the air is so thick. Like there's a humidity so bad that as the apple would fall from the tree, it's sort of like it would be like plinko, like it couldn't make its way down through the air. And that it's kind of so oppressive that it's distorting the integrity of the fruit, the points of the pears and the rounds of the grape. And then we end with cut the heat, plow through it, turning it on either side of your path. So I think the speaker is reaching out for or wishing that something can break through this heat that's stifling nature. And the heat, as the speaker is seeing it, is this force that's so thick within the air and yet invisible, that's so pervasive and yet controlling. And it's an interesting image of nature, especially in a poem that's called Garden. And if you think back to the Alberto Rios poem we did earlier about 20 minutes in the backyard, it's a kind of very different way of understanding and characterizing the witness of something like flowers growing, fruit falling from the trees, or a breeze. That's all I think I want to say about the poem today. Congratulations on making it to the weekend. I wish you a restful and relaxing Saturday. And if it's hot where you are, please make sure that you are staying cool and staying safe. I wish you peace. Have a blessed day.